Let's call a meeting, fiscal court to order. Purpose of our meeting this afternoon is to go over our administrative code. I think you have a copy of the current policy and a draft. Of what, Jeff, is this what you're proposing
Well, this is what,
to look at? I mean,
yeah, well, this is what, when we met before. Right.
we just want to go through this section by section.
However, the court chooses how they'd rather.
Well, the first thing you're looking at is the employee agreement. This is for each employee of the fiscal court, particularly new hires, that we ask them to sign so that they understand that, and I guess we give them a copy of this, is that correct?
Yeah.
And that they agree to read it and abide by it.
Yeah, there's an agreement in the front where they acknowledge receipt and agree to vote.
Anybody have any problems with that section?
No.
Let's move to page 5. This is the introduction.
Judge, wait, can we back up on page 4 for a second? Is this, let me see if this is new. We had been talking about the need for some sort of a internet policy. Is that where this would go on page 4 where it references internet? Because I know we've had some issues with employees using internet for non-county business.
Yeah,
in the back.
chapter 13 goes into detail. This is just the employee signing off that they will read the chapter and abide by it.
Okay, so then chapter 13 goes into the
Right.
specifics of it.
Page 5 is the introduction, purpose, and authority.
Would it
Page
be more
6.
helpful to y'all if we were able to take these home and kind of compare them?
Gonna have
I'm
to.
not able to,
Well, we're gonna have to, so I didn't know if there's anything, that's why I asked Jeff earlier, is there something that we need to discuss here, or otherwise, I need to go home and read this for about 4 hours.
can we hit the highlights of the things that we know are gonna be issues? And
I know sick leave, the sick leave sharing policy, sick
Okay.
leave, how it's taken, how it's accrued, how it rolls over. Same thing with vacation pay. The sick leave donation program though, in specific, is not done.
As
So
in
what-
how it relates to the vacation or the
Yes,
retirement
yes.
benefits, because we're not actually enrolled in that.
Right, and that's pretty much eliminated.
What we're considering is just adopting this draft, right, Judge?
Right,
to
but we
replace
wanna
the
make sure
current.
that.
But-
it
So we
includes
need
Well,
to-
everything you
basically,
all
yeah,
want
to
it
update
include.
everything.
Right, yeah, right.
Right. Now, first thing I noticed is on page 6, is this, to amend, this will require you to review this every year during June. And apparently this is what's recommended by the folks that created this 2/3 majority to amend it. Well, 2/3 majority is going to require 3 of you to vote. Anyway, I mean, so I don't see I think it should just be by regular vote of the court.
Okay.
Unless you want to, unless you want to make it, you leave it like that, then
If you leave it like that, a majority of the court has to vote.
Well-
Now, for any change. which
right,
would
but if
be-
one of you happen to miss,
That's
all
when I would
3
be wanting to
present
bring
would
it
have
up.
to approve it. So it's just which way you all want it. So if somebody's absent, with it being a 2/3 majority, if somebody's absent, everybody present would have to vote to approve.
I
So we
cannot
just-
think of any time that I've had a meeting that someone was absent unless it was at the very last minute, they just got sick or couldn't be there. Because generally, if one of you is gonna be gone out of town or otherwise engaged, I try to, I'm not looking at you. You did. I try to reschedule, the
Right.
meeting so that we all can be here. I don't see that as a problem, but if y'all want to change that, that's okay. I mean,
The general administration is something new that kind of just defines certain powers, and basically everything that's in there is in the statute.
Emily, are there other things that you know?
Chapter 5, goes into personnel
what
administration.
page is that?
19.
Just a minute, so I'll get there. Go ahead.
This will require, some work on everybody's part. We'll have to have a job classification for everybody, and I think this would go into, job descriptions and things like this. So we would have to have the supervisors get involved with this, and probably the county attorney's office as far as helping us decide whether they're exempt or non-exempt employees and things like that. That's something that will require work to be done before we can put this into effect.
First one of these that I ever witnessed was prepared back in 1974 or 75, when they first started talking about, you probably have a need for administrative code. Ed Logsdon was a county judge of Edmonson County, and his administrative code was one page. It said, Edmonson County government shall be operated on a day-to-day basis with a county judge executive. Any questions? Refer to paragraph 1 above. He sent it in. And they passed it.
Well, chapter 5 really goes into the employee, past that, really goes into your employees.
Is there a provision in here for any sort of an annual review or,
I think not.
personnel? I know a lot of times we've had issues where we've had ongoing issues with employees and it's not been properly documented, so at the point that it's really time to address it, we don't have a written history. So is there a way to,
And it's been a while since I looked at this, but I do believe it does outline disciplinary action for the supervisors, but CAECO guards against employee evaluations and stuff, so that is, and it's actually like an evaluation process and things, I don't think is in here. I think that it was not included, but they're,
well, I think the problem
Well, I
with,
think Misty's,
Yeah, well-
I think your point is, and we've talked about this, and I have with our county supervisors, when they have a problem with an employee, put it in writing. We cannot act on something that, I said, well, now, back 3 or 4 weeks ago, well, did you write it up? Is it in the folder? No, well, we can't act on that.
Right.
And I think
Right.
Mr. Point is well taken. And I've encouraged our supervisors to do just that, Misty.
On page 20, under section 5.5, there's discipline procedures. And it says, "The county judge shall discipline county employees by written reprimand, suspension, or discharge in the best interest of the county."
the problem then, though, becomes that if a supervisor witnesses the offense, then they
That's-
don't make proper note of it. I guess, is there some way that we could better outline what the supervisor's responsibility is? Because they're the ones that are seeing this firsthand, and sometimes the judge may not know about it for 2 or 3 weeks. So if they were required to keep on hand some sort of a personnel folder or make available to you all for purpose of adding to a personnel folder, any type of a written document that they expect action to be taken on, that might be a requirement. Before the judge takes any action, he has some sort of a written report in his hand.
Well, that's something, and Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you could come up with a document that I could give to each one of the supervisors, outlining any disciplinary action must be in writing. Must be in writing, because if it's not in writing, it's just like it didn't happen.
Right.
I have a form that I use within my office for things like that could be modified to be blanket. And that might be something that should be included more with that supervisor's job description within that, maybe.
And just some training on how to identify what's reportable. A lot of times we might have, let's just use a vague example, but maybe they've witnessed somebody that they felt like there was some substance abuse issues with, but they didn't write it down. So then, we're talking about it and they say, oh, well, about a year ago I noticed blah, blah. Well, then we're like, why didn't you write that down? So maybe if we make a form available, then we have a better way of documenting and communicating those instances so that the judge can handle it, because it can't be everywhere. I mean,
Right, yeah.
You're the first
yeah.
one.
And there
I
was,
know, it's
there was
amazing, isn't it?
several of the places that we had changed the wording to say the county judge or department supervisor or something like that, where,
Well, I agree with Misty, the supervisor, maybe we need to give them some training. Like Commissioner Drew said, set them down and say, okay, well, let's go over a few things here. And here's what we expect of you. If you suspect something, now, I don't want you to go off half-cocked, but if you have reason to believe, make a note of it. That at least it's been called to your attention.
We could include a provision under section 5.4 on page 20, under that section to include.
Can't you just put the county judge and/or department supervisors?
And then, well, you could include in there that annual review, documented annual reviews, and did they document any
disciplinary
action.
action.
Right, we could add that in there.
Now, normally, if someone's gonna be disciplined, we know about it. But again, I think it's just better to have it in writing, something we can sit down and then call the supervisor in, why did you write this person up on this occasion and for what, or that sort of thing. Particularly if it's gonna entail a dismissal, because that's where it gets very sticky.
On section 519, announcements of vacancies, is there any reason why we couldn't just open that up to include all employment opportunities to be advertised? I mean, we've talked about it, and usually we do it anyway.
A, is that what you're talking about?
Yes. It almost makes it sound like we wouldn't want to, and I don't think we've ever had that opinion. We've always opened it up, when we've discussed it, we've opened it up. But the way it reads, it almost makes it sound like we wouldn't want to.
I think it is allowing for the occasion that if there was an occasion where you all as a whole did not want to, you didn't have to.
Or you could just add a sentence there, notice of employment opportunities and necessary examinations, if any, may be publicized at the county judge's discretion with approval of the fiscal court. I mean, I think we always discuss.
We always, yeah.
Wherever it's just not spelled out there. But if we'd add that,
That way it doesn't sound like you're going to decide that's what it makes it sound like. It makes it sound like you wouldn't want to open it up, and you've never said we can't open something up, so I think it sounds bad.
Page 20.
Oh,
just at the county judge's discretion with the approval of the fiscal court, how would that be?
I think so. I think that doesn't make it sound like you're gonna be like, no, we're not gonna open this one, or yes, we are gonna open that one.
I just wondered.
Taking all the fun out of my job,
Sorry.
Drew.
On the end of that.
No.
Wanting to leave, Emily, do we need to discuss the insurance, the 9 days? Does that need to be in our policy?
We need to be careful with it, because if KEHA changes their policy,
Right. We need to put wording in here,
We
though,
may
we
just-
would follow,
KEHA's policy.
is that in here now?
I don't know. I haven't looked at this. There's a place for health insurance. It would be.
It would be under that, yeah. I'm just trying to think of stuff that's
Yeah, there is-
arisen that we've talked about lately.
Now, on section B, on section 520, this is appointments. And I think that's pretty, where a declaration of emergency has been declared, the county may hire employees on a temporary basis for emergency purposes without the fiscal court approval. The only time I can think of where that might happen is if we had a natural disaster. And I had to very quickly, and could be that we, like when the tornado came through, I was in Louisville, and several county officials were, because it was the CAECO conference. And I had to, because my cell phone was not getting any service at all, getting through, and finally I got through to the chief, Dwayne Halls, and authorized Dwayne to take over till I could get back the next day. But that's the only time I remember even having to do that. Now, once back in 1974, 8th, we had a huge snowstorm. And Governor Carroll, by executive order, gave each county so much money to go out and hire farmers if they had plows on their tractors to help us. Because I remember Commissioner Hargrove and Commissioner Devine and Commissioner Lovett, or magistrates then. We were scrambling around trying to find people in their districts that we could use to get out, because I don't know, Dale, you're probably in grade school back then, but that was, Gordon just went in, that's one of the worst snowstorms we'd ever had.
Accumulating sick.
Yeah, we were
It's like
having,
Christie, yeah.
we were
I
having,
run one of Terry's loaders.
yeah, we were having
Hearing
to
all
bring
that.
in nurses to the hospital, 3 shifts a day, getting nurses in and out of the hospital and doctors. We had an old surplus army truck, and Bubby called it a possum box we could have put on the back of it so they wouldn't freeze to death. And Mighty Mouse, I can't think of his name, drove the truck with a possum box on it there for about a week and a half. It was that bad. We were out of school. David, do you remember that?
It was about a while.
About 2 weeks, y'all were out of school about 2 weeks, I think. It was rough.
I was in middle school.
Thank you. Reminded me of that.
So we know we're gonna have to work on sick leave and all that sort of thing, right?
Now, what is it she wanted us to look at on the sick leave, or what page are we on?
Oh, Emily? Yeah, it's about this,
Now, I know something on page 27 where it starts into sick leave, under A,
Hold
where
on,
it says,
Hold on. Under A on 27?
27, he's on sick leave now.
Okay.
We have it set where it says, all employees occupying full-time regular positions shall receive 1 working day of sick leave credit for each month of service, which shall be accrued monthly. We've had questions, I know, from different departments in our office, and I think this is where we need it set in the personnel policy, so it's not one department doing it one way, another department doing a different way. In the event that someone is off on workers' comp or FMLA, do they still earn a day of sick time, even though they're not physically working?
I wouldn't think so, would you?
Or if they're using vacation time while they're on FMLA, I know technically in the past, if they're using time that they've earned, we let them accumulate sick time.
It was a hack.
But that's where we need to set something up,
If they're on workers' comp, they probably should still accrue.
because that, yeah, and that's where we need provisions for,
Not sickness exactly, but workers' comp, you shouldn't, I don't think we need to penalize them on,
and I would think if they're using vacation time and they've earned that, then we shouldn't penalize them. But if they're just taking time off without pay,
Or what
then I
about
don't feel like they
FMLA?
should earn sick time.
What
if
about
they're not.
FMLA? What about the leave?
Now, FMLA protects them, is it 12 weeks?
but it's without pay.
Yes.
Yeah, so I
But some
think it would-
some people have enough vacation time or sick time to use that while they're on FMLA.
Which they would still accrue. But
Right.
what if they don't have that time and they're strictly on FMLA? Would your
Then-
suggestion be that they don't
Yeah.
accrue
Yes.
a month? That would be the only provision then where they would not.
well,
As
it
if-
would be then any
Any
compensated leave
Let's back
or,
up, and I mean, the definition of FMLA is that it's non-paid, I mean.
It's unpaid and all it does is protect your
If you're taking
job.
vacation or you're taking sick days, then you're not, I wouldn't think you're really on FMLA.
right.
I don't
All
think, yeah,
FMLA
you couldn't be
does is
considered
protect
on
your.
FMLA if you've got time to cover it.
Right.
Yeah, most of the time they don't go on FMLA until
They've
they've
exhausted.
exhausted their days.
So only uncompensated days off they won't accrue for.
Right. Compensated
Unpaid days.
time or time off for work-related injury.
Right.
Now, what David's brought up is USERA.
Yeah, the SARA Act too, you have to be careful of that one, because we're getting more and more.
What's that?
The SARA Act, you know, where you can't penalize someone for taking off for federal
Right.
duty.
Well, but that's not compensated, so they wouldn't, you'd have to follow the federal law and hold the job, but they wouldn't be
They wouldn't
gaining.
accrue
You
sick
talking
They
time.
wouldn't
about
accrue
jury
sick time.
duty and things like that, Dave?
I know, like National Guard, if they get deployed for a
Oh,
year.
okay.
Right, national, yeah.
Right, our regard there is to make, we have to hold their job.
Yes.
But we don't have to give them sick
No.
time.
No, no.
Only I think, like you said, if they are on, they take vacation time.
Right.
That kind of thing.
So we just need to add for compensated, any uncompensated time off, you won't earn.
Right,
sick
that's your
time.
way.
And then the other thing is the sick leave as it pertains to unused days when someone retires or is terminated, is that right, Emily, as to how they can use that? Because it was being, for those that retired, it was being used as some sort of a benefit to their retirement, but since we don't participate in that program, they can't use that, right? There's not-
Right, this sick leave is, seems quite a bit stricter as far as using it just for sick time. And part of the way you make that stricter is with the sick leave donation program, where that you don't get to participate if people know you've abused it in any way. If I'm just gonna take, I'm out of vacation time, but I wanna take next week off, so I'm gonna call in sick, you know, that would be an abuse of it, and I wouldn't be able to participate in it. Some of the things though I want you all to consider is how much they can accrue. We have some employees that are maxed out, on sick leave, what they can accrue. And I think there's a point to what they should have, but I think your employees that do max it out,
Are not abusing it.
they're not abusing it, or they wouldn't have it maxed out, and that if they have something catastrophic happen, I feel like they've been a good employee and not abused that time, and they've earned, the time to take off. So there's a lot of ways that you can work.
What is our policy now? How many days can they accrue?
60.
60 days, that's
It's
what I thought.
480 hours.
So currently, if someone retires tomorrow and they have 60 days, there's really no provision, right? Because it was changed to where you couldn't just cash it out, and the only
Right, we don't
benefit.
pay for it, however, because our current policy states that we'll participate in the sick leave program with the retirement system, when we don't participate in it, we have allowed them to draw that sick time out.
Right.
Before they leave,
So we definitely need to,
change that, and I think that'll be something that we will have to inform the employees about, that if you've got some that are planning on retiring in the next 6 to 8 months, because it's gonna take us a little while to get all this stuff in order to put it in place, but let them know that that's gonna change and you're not gonna be able to do that anymore. We might need to come up with something that says we pay for 2 weeks of it, or we don't pay, some way to
Well,
do something with
there's
that,
got to
but-
be some way to reward an employee for being faithful to his job and not using sick leave just for the sake of burning it.
exactly.
Whether or not we give them the whole shooting match, that's
Right,
up for discussion, but I don't think we should say, well, if you don't use it, you lose it, because then you're saying to them, you better call in sick a
You
day
might
or
as well,
two.
yeah, right.
And,
Right.
Well, and with our maximum, it would take an employee working 5 years and not using any sick time to earn that 480 hours. And we have a few employees who are maxed out at that right now.
I guess I just feel like Landon's situation, and if you have something like that happen and you are one of those people, I feel like they deserve to be able
able to
to,
go.
to take what they need. Because they have not been one of those people that's, oh, I got 8 hours, I get to take off next month.
And you've got some that'll use every bit of it.
Yeah,
On a
Well,
weekly
so
basis.
maybe there's a happy medium somewhere to where people are somewhat, I hate to use the word rewarded, but
Right.
in essence, that's what you're talking about.
yeah,
And then the people who continually use their sick time, maybe there's a little bit of a policy differential for them to where,
that after they,
Well, it was, during some of that discussion previously, it was thrown around, of course, 100, I know some places are 180 days, it's actually 6 months. And I'm sure there's others, I know the school systems just cruise forever. So I don't know if you either set a limit or you don't set a limit. You set the limit to whatever you think's fair, and
I mean, if you
Yes,
set
they
it to, it never has a cap, but in the event that they retire or terminate, you only pay for 2 weeks, or, then it doesn't matter how much they have. That's just a security blanket for them in case they have something happen.
Sick days are kinda like an insurance policy,
that's what it's for.
Mickey Searles doesn't send me a check at the end of every year just because I was a nice guy and didn't file a claim that year.
Yes.
I mean, it's an insurance. Is it not?
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, when I left the city of Benton after 25 years, I got up and went home. And I could probably dug about $5,000 out of their pocket if I'd wanted to have, but they gave me so many sick days, so many vacation days, and I didn't use all of them, not near all of them, and I just got up and went home. Judge Miller won't charge us for all his overtime, will you, Judge, when you leave? They'll sell the whole damn county. I mean, at some point in time, the people
You gotta
that
draw a
have
line.
to, it's part of the, it's their responsibility as humans and appreciating the job that they've had to not abuse the system just because they can.
Right.
Sick days to me are sick days. And if you're sick, they're there for you if you need them and you won't lose your pay that day. It's not to abuse, go to Walmart or whatever we want to do with it. And if we don't use them, then we're lucky we didn't get sick and have to go to the doctor. So I just don't understand. I mean, I just never did that. So I'm in left field. I just think that everybody use their sick days when they retire, they get up and go to the house.
And I think that's a good idea, but your problem is you've got people who have saved them with the intention of cashing them in. So where do you draw that line where the people that got to cash it in 6 months ago were working alongside the ones that's been saving it with plans to cash in 2 months' worth of sick time at some point? I think that's,
Well, that's what I said years ago, Misty. We just need to give them so many vacation days every year and that's it. No sick days, just all vacation,
Well,
all on vacation.
I'm aware of a private employer here that they give extra, what they call personal days. And your first day off each time is a personal day. Now, after that, you can take sick time, but that first day every time is a personal day. So, if you're gonna get sick, if it's gonna be more than one day, you're gonna use that personal day, then your sick time. So, I don't know how fair that is, it's just the one way they've dealt with it.
It's kind of 6 one, half dozen the other. I mean, if you're sick, you're sick. I'm like Terry, and I don't wanna penalize anybody if they're sick and don't want them to lose a day's pay. But by the same token, we have to set a limit somewhere.
we do offer short-term disability policies, don't we? Do we not have
we,
that?
they are offered through secondary insurance companies.
I mean, that's a really good
That-
deal because, you pay a small premium, but then if you're out more than, I think, 2 weeks, they pick up and
Yeah.
pay like 75% of your regular
Yeah,
wages.
but that's at the employee's
Cost.
cost.
Yeah.
We don't
We don't
pay
provide
anything
that.
for that.
Right.
Well, you hate to offer someone a benefit and it turn into a burden. And that's what this seems to be, is we give them some insurance that they won't lose pay if they get sick on the job, and that's turned into a nightmare for us.
How many do we have that would legitimately
They're probably
be
capped
effective?
6 to 10.
6 to 10.
So less than a dozen people.
Right.
That
Oh,
are
yes.
that are maxed out.
Mhm.
So have we asked them if their intention is to cash them out?
I know just one employee has made comment to me that it's not fair to be maxed out on sick time because if you get to that point, you're not abusing it anyway. But I don't know if their intention was to cash it out. They were just making the comment that it didn't seem fair to get a
Well, maybe it's as
In-
easy as what you're saying, and you say this is what it is, and it's not anything other than a benefit while you're employed, and when you leave, you go home, and if we're talking
And even if
about-
you don't set I mean, for those people that get it to 480 and max it out, even if they had 600, I mean, there comes a point where we have to set a cap to protect the court because you can't have someone earning 1,000 hours and taking off.
Well, right now, it's an unfunded liability.
Right.
That's exactly what it
Right.
is.
Exactly.
So,
And, I think we've misled everyone over the years into believing that at the beginning of the year, you automatically have 12 sick days. and they're in the bank over here waiting for you. That's not
Right.
not the meaning of that. That means that if you get sick 12 days, you can be off without losing your pay.
But people
If you
think
get-
they're entitled to
If you get
them.
sick 3 days, you're off. But you can't, if you miss more than 12, well, we're gonna start asking a lot of questions, you're gonna have to be off that
Right.
pay. It didn't mean it would automatically, you get 12 days, that if you're not sick that year, you can just go to Walmart instead. That's not what that was, the point of that.
Right.
But that's what it's turned into. That's exactly what it's turned into. And like Judge said, it's an unfunded liability, and it's not getting any better.
We know what Terry's doing on his sick days.
So I don't know where we're gonna have to draw the line in the sand somewhere.
We talked about, just saying as of this date, we didn't do it, but we talked about as of this date, then here's the new policy.
Yeah.
And you
I think
wouldn't-
that's-
it wouldn't-
that's
it wouldn't
gonna be the
you wouldn't-
best
You could accrue, and I
Solution.
think at one point, we said you could accrue more days, maybe we backed it up, but I think we talked about accruing up to 6 months, but then them not being available for any kind of cash out.
Yeah, if you set this policy in effect January 1, 2013, and those people expected to get to cash them out, sorry, the new policy says you can't do that. I mean,
You don't want to sound unappreciative, but at the same time, Terry's right,
you have to draw a line
I
somewhere.
would say the ones that are capped out, you could tell by looking at how many years they had in, is if they were,
Even close enough.
Well, and that's not fair to the ones that have been led to believe this and
Right.
that they wait till the 11th hour and 45 minutes and then chop them off the knees. I'm not for that either.
Right.
But we're gonna have to, moving forward, we're gonna have to make a new,
Maybe you identify the
Well,
ones that are gonna be affected, like what we said, and find out the ones that have
those
the
to them.
that
intention
plan
of.
to possibly retire within the next
2 years.
year and a half, something like that, and
Right.
evaluate those individually, and past that point, everybody's by the book.
Isn't that gonna be a nightmare to keep up with?
No, I mean, again, you wouldn't have to be as of January 1, 2013. It could simply be as of January 1, 2015 or 14. This is what's gonna happen, and then once you wrote this and they signed off that, they've read it and understand it, and this is what happens from this day forward. I mean, we have these kind of things happen, that happens all the time with differences in contracts.
Well, look at Kentucky retirement.
And retirement changes, and all these things change, and they generally do that as of a certain
A
day.
certain date, so many years out.
Right.
I know when I was first elected sheriff judge, I had 2 employees that I paid 6 months after they left.
Right.
It's not real healthy for your budget when you're.
That's what, and we have some in that situation right now.
That's what we're gonna be working into more so all the time if we
Now,
don't
when
really.
you increase it, is there any way you'll ever be able to eliminate someone that's going to just simply say they're sick when they're not sick and take those days off?
They're like the school board, after so many days, you have to have a doctor's excuse,
Right.
yes.
I mean, and
You can get
And that's
one
in
of
our,
them.
that's in the
it's in
policy.
here as the supervisor may
Discretion.
request it, but it may be something that after 3 days, I don't know, I'm on the fence about that, cause I'm a hard head, and after 3 days, it's gonna take me at least 3 days of being sick before I'm going to the doctor.
Right.
But it might discourage people who,
Which is gonna help our insurance.
Well, if you look at section 4, it says the county judge, an elected official, or a designee may investigate the alleged illness of an employee under the elected official's supervision, absent from work on sick leave. False or fraudulent use of sick leave may be cause for disciplinary action up to and including dismissal.
Yes.
And I
That's in
take that
there.
to mean, if he's
Oh,
got an
yeah.
employee on sick time, and he's out turkey hunting or deer hunting, I would have a little bit of an occasion to question that illness.
And that's where
Not
this,
picking on turkey hunters or deer
I
hunters.
say,
And,
a good example there.
or if Terry sees anybody at Walmart using sick time.
That happened, that was a true story, that's the reason I used that one. About 10 to 1.
And that's
You
where,
just probably fill in a prescription.
that's where
Probably wasn't.
if we educate the supervisors to do disciplinary write-ups, in the event that sick time is being abused over multiple periods of time, if they write that up, employee A was using sick time and I saw them out turkey hunting, and that's in their personnel file, then the next time it happens, it's more of a 3-strike you're out, and it's to where they've been warned and they know not to do it again, to where it protects us. I'll look into the employees who are at the maximum now, and we'll try to get some answers on that.
So we're gonna leave this on the 60 days that they can accumulate, and then
I think after, and we'll need to set a time, Terry, so as not to penalize those that have reached that, but after a certain period of time, we're only gonna allow you to cash in 10 days, 12 days, whatever the court decides, instead of the 60, but those that have been diligent in coming to work and not missing and building up that time, I'm like you, I hate to penalize them.
right.
An example, is Tater Edwards. Tater, he's been cut on more than anybody. Last time, they cut on his neck, doctor told him to be off 9 weeks. He said, no, I'm going back to work in 3 weeks. And he didn't ask for any special treatment whatsoever. Told me the other day, I'll be back in 4 weeks. I said, Tater, this is back surgery, son. This is not something you feel. He has legs cut on, everything. But he said, well, I'm out of sick time. He documented everything, brought in excuses and all that. It's people like that you want to try to protect, but by the same token, we got to draw a line somewhere, or our unfunded liability is going to really catch up with us.
Those situations in that regard, we allow people, I think, if I've overheard correctly in the past few years, that we allow them to accumulate up to 60 days of time in case they have a heart surgery or something, it would obviously take them off for longer than the allotted 12. We would be better off to deal with those on an individual basis as they may occur than we would be to give every employee 60 days. We've already paid some who went home, paid them 60 days, and I can't with my head do the math on that, but you're talking about several dollars when someone leaves. Then I'm not certain, wouldn't be better off to just review those situations as they occur and maybe look at them that way. I don't know, you have to, the only thing that would tell the story there would be the history, but I have to wonder if that wouldn't be a better route than giving everyone up to 60 days. Just like Tater's case, or anyone else who may have had a heart surgery or whatever, if they're off 2 or 3 months, that we might consider something in that regard. I don't know what we can do legally, but
I think the only thing there is that you may get into being fair across the board as far as remembering what you did 3 years ago for employee A.
yeah, but see, we have to remember that fair is if I had heart surgery next week and you didn't, and I was off from work, I'm not sure that you got mistreated. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
But people would look at that on the flip side of that coin and say, well, he got off and was paid. They forgot to tell you had tubes hanging out of every hole you had in your body. Sick days are sick days to me, period. That's just the end of the story. But I don't know, I don't have all the answers either. I can tell you what I think, but I don't know how to tell you we're gonna fix it. But I do think, like Judge said, we gotta draw the line in the sand somewhere, because we have to answer, we gotta pay the piper
Well, and I
sometime.
think if we go to train more supervisors on disciplinary actions and we address sick time with supervisors, that may help us there too, to where if supervisors think that their employees are abusing sick time, they can discipline them. I mean, 'cause honestly, you would, out of each department, there's maybe 2 to 3 people at max that really abuse. And,
I
you
don't
don't wanna
suspect we
penalize
have a lot, do we?
everybody.
I'm not really suspecting we have maybe a lot of abuse, a great deal of abuse of sick days, but what's killing us is our policy at the end of their career.
Right.
If a person's sick
The
tomorrow,
60
if-
days is what's
if you
killing us,
happen to
when
be
you have to
sick,
pay it out all at once.
Right,
Yeah,
true.
that's
what
not the
needs to be
killer. If you're sick
modified.
tomorrow and you miss, and Emily and them goes ahead and runs the store without you, that's not the big thing, but whenever you
Right.
decide to leave and we owe you $10,000, that's what hurts.
Yes, that's
Mm-hmm.
the part that needs to be, that's the immediate,
Right.
Right.
We could have, 2 or 3 of those this year, couldn't we, Emily, you say?
We got one that we're working on now that he won't be done.
Till
He's till February.
end of January.
What's that come to in your head on a 480-hour deal?
I don't know, I can't
8,000
think
bucks,
of,
thereabout?
Yeah, Jackson used his.
That'd be about right.
$7,000?
Yeah,
$7,000 to $8,000?
it's 17,
I
He's
can't.
the one that we're paying
so
I was figuring 20, that'd be 8, so.
be about
now.
8.
Yeah, if,
See, that's what would the old person
Right,
with that many hours when they left work. And then if you had vacation time, you'd.
Add that to it,
So you could,
because that's time earned.
you get scalded wanted to that, and that person would probably have 5 weeks of vacation if he hoarded that up to land and sold it back to you, and then 480 hours sick time, you're looking at a pretty serious check at one time.
yes.
but now if we change the policy, that won't be an issue anymore, correct?
Right, then they wouldn't, we changed the policy where if you know, we'll pay you for, and you can set that policy to anything, that if you have 100 hours in your bank, we're gonna pay you for a week. If you have 200 hours in your bank, we'll pay you for 2 weeks, you know?
Upon termination of employment.
Y'all can set that however you want,
Or you don't have to pay anything.
or, yeah, you know.
Well, we could do, I mean, you can, like I say, you can come to a point, give them a little bit of a buffer time there, and then come to a point where you don't pay anything.
Right,
Judge, why couldn't they accumulate so much time for, in the case of a catastrophic illness? They just have that much time in their bank, and if they ever have that happen, use it. If they don't, I don't.
Then if you
Right.
don't, it just goes
It's gone.
away.
It just goes away, yeah.
It's
That's the way I
never
did
paid
when I
out to
left
you.
Benton. I just got up and went home. In that way, we wouldn't be out, you wouldn't be out all those large sums at one time at the end of the person's career.
Yeah.
But they could still accumulate the time, but it'd be for that purpose, not for
True, yeah.
anything other than that.
and that's the person that's had an issue with it, I believe, felt that way, that if they've
Right.
saved up 480 hours, in the event that their child is in a car accident tomorrow and they're out for,
Right. That's why we
8
let them,
months.
that's the purpose of us allowing them to accumulate so
Right,
many
right.
hours anyway, so if they have
if that
have
happens.
an illness that would be long-term, then they would have some time built up. And we could do that, but not pay them, buy it back from them.
Right, and that's when we change the policy to say we will not participate in the sick leave program. That'll cut out,
But,
but you don't want to
We've
penalize
got to make the changeover.
and we've got to, in their pay envelopes, make sure everybody understands the changes that have
that
occurred.
are coming.
Because, you know, some guy walk in and say, well, I've got 400 hours of sick time I want paid for, and we've made a decision. I mean, we just gotta let them know. And I would say by the first of the year.
And that's where, what Bob was saying is that we can put in this policy effective January 1st, 2015. We, you give it so many years
You
to
can
where,
Tell the employees
because I mean, if
that
people,
there's a, give them a form that if you plan on retiring in the next 2 years, that they need to fill that out and let us know for you all, a request that you all review their time that they have or whatever, so that you all can make a decision about what would be fair to pay them out.
Or put it
Well,
into
what-
January 1 and exempt those others from it.
That's what I'm saying. If we get into this, we're gonna review each one individually, and you do one way and one another, that's not consistent. I want a
Right.
policy that is consistent,
Yeah. You all-
that everyone understands and knows what it is. Because that burden falls on you. Well, he's a good old boy, we'll go ahead and pay him 60 days. Well, this one too good a worker, we'll pay him 30. That's not fair, and I think we're getting some real problems doing that.
That may be what Misty said,
Yeah.
is just exempt those employees that notify you that
Who
they
are
plan on
already maxed
retiring
out.
within this period of time, and they're requesting to go by the old policy.
And some of them may not be requesting that. There may be only 5 of the 10 who
Yeah,
are-
you're not gonna
are
have that
maxed
many,
out.
they're gonna retire in the next 2 years.
If they had the intention of cashing it out, though, I feel like Terry, I think it's wrong just to go in and say, sorry about your luck, you can't do what everybody else did, if they're already maxed out, because like you said, it took 5 years to accrue that. That's That's quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, you gotta be consistent going forward, and it applies to everybody, but I think somewhere there's gotta be
Well,
a small
and two,
compromise.
you gotta think about, it's a difference if somebody retires or somebody who voluntarily leaves our employment. And they say, well, you owe me this, this, and this. Well, it's your call to leave. It wasn't ours, so I don't know that we owe you anything. You know, if you voluntarily leave. A lot to think about. I mean, you know, but I'm like Commissioner Drew, I'd like to set a January 1 or some date that after this date, this is our policy. And if you want those others that, if you want to treat them, you know, let us know, because if you're going to retire in the next 2 years, or whatever that might be, Jeff, there's got to be some legal ramifications here as well.
Yeah. I mean, you can make the policy whatever you want. It just, this whole requiring notice in the next 2 years of retirement, that bothers me a little bit. That kind of stuff. I think that's getting too far into it. I mean, I think if you're gonna set a date for your policy to change, that would be it. I mean, that would be the way to do it. And, I mean, technically, you could change her today. You could throw this completely out, everything you've got, and say, here are the new rules. You don't have this. You don't have but a week's vacation time, no matter how long you've been here. You know, you could do all that if you chose. But obviously, that wouldn't be fair. So, you know, you can set it out you say 2 years from this January, 1. And that would be the date that this policy will change, something like that.
We'd like to read all this through carefully and then before we consider a vote on it. I mean, there's stuff, we may have questions. I mean, we may need to come back and
Probably have another one of these.
ask some questions, but I'd like to review it first.
Sure. I don't
Feel
have a
more
problem with
informed
that.
about it.
And make,
don't think
while
there's
you're
gonna be-
doing that,
Make notes through it.
any questions you have, make
Yeah,
your
we'll
little
just make
notes so we
notes, that's all.
can.
We'll read through it, make notes, and then
Right.
we come back and move
Now-
more quickly through it.
This is, does everybody have a copy of the current policy as
Yes.
well?
Yes, right.
So you can
Right.
compare.
We can just set the kitchen table
What
and
is separation?
quiet, work on
Huh.
it.
Termination?
I noticed that, I wasn't really sure.
What's that? What page?
On page 38, 5.43.
Wait a minute.
Which one you in?
Separation.
Draft?
It just tells you
The
we may be separated by dismissal, resignation, retirement, or
layoff,
Separated from what?
employment.
From their check.
Is that different from different from suspension or dismissal?
Oh, it just goes into dismissal, the different reasons, and then it lists,
Oh, okay, okay,
yeah,
okay.
underneath it.
I
That's
noticed it
just,
didn't say.
dismissal's a type of separation.
I thought you wrote this.
No, not that part, Bob.
It didn't say anything, though, about, it, basically, everything it says relates to on the job or, consumption of alcohol or drugs off the job, but it doesn't say anything about arrests or convictions that might be non-related to any of those, so I wonder if we should add that.
Okay,
Yeah.
Depending on what the charge is, it may not meet any of those criteria, but it may be something that we feel is not becoming a county employee. I mean, just take, for instance, if it was a child abuse charge or sexual in nature or something like that, we may, you know, when I'm,
No, I'm
you
listening.
understand what I'm talking?
Commissioner, I'm
Okay.
listening.
Right,
I'm
even
not-
though it's not job related.
Is that on the video? I'm just saying,
It's not specifically job related, but could affect their job.
yes, you did.
No, I was listening.
Something that we
Commissioner.
might feel would be in conflict with,
Their duties.
yes. You know.
That can be added, and I think it should be. I mean,
Can we just briefly talk about the warden thing for a moment so that we can have options on the table prior to the 18th when we review all these and move forward on that?
Yes, sir.
And you've got another application down in the office.
Another one down there.
Oh.
We've got Dennis's.
Oh, okay, that's the one I
Y'all
had
have
down there. I didn't have
Dennis, yeah, I
it.
brought Dennis.
Okay.
Um,
And I told,
Dog warden.
Josh, if, his dad was interested, because he just said he would fill in and help,
Yes.
you know.
Yes.
But, if he's interested, I want him to go ahead and fill out an application. Whether he will or not, I don't know, but.
We had talked about, we even had the meeting last year about training, and there is, since the state moved from the warden system to animal control, there is a national certification for that. It's level 1 and level 2. It's 80 hours for completion and certification as an ACO. Bowling Green, Louisville, some of those more metro areas are some of the first to have their ACOs certified under that national level designation. It goes through all the basic training that they should have. At the minimal, I would hope that we would ask our ACOs to have that before entering into the ordinance that Jeff has drafted because of the many legalities involved in that new animal ordinance. They're very expansive. And the duties that are outlined and powers given to the animal control officer are really going to create some liabilities if we don't ensure that our animal control officers are properly trained. And it's really set up to create some additional revenue because they're able to not only address the situation, just your typical calls, your dog catcher calls, if you will, but they're also set up to see these cases from the point of executing a search warrant to carrying a case throughout court. They're given the powers under this new ordinance to do that. But right now what we have is, I kind of referred to it as a broken system. I don't mean that to be rude. I just mean that law enforcement's doing their thing and our dog wardens are doing another. There's no communication. There's no ability to work together. We're not collecting any of the fees that are already a part of like the Benton City ordinance, and a majority of our calls are coming from the city of Benton. So right now, I would say that we have thousands of dollars worth of fees that we could be collecting if we had a functioning animal control program. Law enforcement's answering about 500 of the 700 and some odd calls. Dog wardens are currently answering about 300. So we have a lot of duplication. We could go the route we've been going, hopefully with some training, or we could look at law enforcement carrying that. And I asked the sheriff's office, I've asked Benton PD, and I talked to Calvert PD about options in terms of what it would look like if they took over the animal control. And so David, I think, has some numbers for us today on what that would look like.
Well, we looked at it as, without Benton Coward, looked at it just if we took it all over, and the sheriff said that by his figures, we're looking at a cost of about $42,000 to $45,000 year one to do that. And the way that that they would do it would be to send, like 3 officers to the training that Commissioner Drew was talking about, and then use those funds for basically for overtime pool for those officers when to do a rotating system where they would take all of those calls, whether it be a law enforcement call or the animal control officer call under that overtime rotating call system. And then also the rest of those funds then would be used to pay for fuel for one of our vehicles to be modified so it could be used for that. So that was about what he came up with, was about $42,000 to $45,000.
And we're at 36 now, I think, in what we have between our 2 wardens. Is that right? 36? 24 for one and 12 for the other?
Well, you had to take into consideration, some things like, you would, want a tranquilizer gun, the catch poles, modifying that vehicle, having some sort of ability to change the bed on one of the truck that we have, so that they would have the little things to carry the animals in, to carry equipment in, that sort of thing. So, that wasn't in addition to the pay, so that's why the number's a little higher, is because we'd have to take that on consideration, and of course, with fuel being over $3 a gallon, we always have to think about fuel around there.
The only reason I've advocated for law enforcement, we're properly trained ACOs. I'm not totally, in favor of one over the other. I do like the idea of it reducing duplication. We obviously have a problem with duplication. That's evident in the numbers. I mean, if you've got officers called out 500 and some odd out of the 700 and some odd calls, that's telling you there's a large problem with duplication. So I do like that. But
Where is
secondly,
this training held?
it's all over the United States. The first training will be available in January. It's like the first week. It's a 40-hour training, level 1. It's in Atlanta. It's the closest one. The second is level 2, and it has to be obtained within 12 to 18 months. And if I remember correctly, level 2 is not available until the end of the year. So you'd have almost a year gap between level 1 and level 2 certification for your ACOs.
Who's this, and this would just be for animal control officers?
Animal control. It's an 80-hour certification, and you have to have level 1 and level 2.
And that's a
then
federal certification?
it's no, it's a state, it's a,
Federal training for a state
yes,
certification.
and by state, it's not required anywhere. You don't have to have anything. We could hire anybody out of here and be completely compliant with the state, but they recommend their training manual, which we looked at last year, is like that thick. It's not a mandate yet, but the liability, if you read this ordinance that Jeff has put forward, it would be silly not to have animal control officers that understand the law and who are well-versed in it. You don't want just anybody going out and trying to ask for a search warrant. You don't want just anybody being able to go out and enter someone's property without, as simple as having a vehicle that's properly marked. Right now, our dog wardens go out in vehicles that are not marked. They have no emergency devices on them. Oftentimes they're on the side of the Purchase Parkway or I-24, no markings. We're putting them in danger. They're using their own vehicles, but we're putting them in danger because people can't see them. So they're out chasing animals on the side of the roadway and driving up in people's yards. You drive up in somebody's driveway in Marshall County and you're not in a marked vehicle, that's dangerous enough. But then add to it that you're getting out and you're trying to take somebody's animal off their property. I just think we have to really look at what we're asking these people to do. And either A, provide them with proper training, or B, give it to law enforcement who's primarily handling it anyway. I mean, what do you think? You're on the committee, you're on the animal shelter committee. You drafted this ordinance. What's your thoughts?
Well, I've tried to make this match the powers that are in the statute. Now, there are more things in here, stuff that you're probably there's probably some things in here that won't be applicable. Just keep that in mind as you go through it, but I try to make it as current as possible and as all-encompassing as possible. And what I did was use ordinances from other places, combined them, shortened them. I mean, as I've shown you before, and I've got lots of examples here, we go from anywhere where you've got a complete dog licensing, countywide dog licensing program, like you have in Kenton County, down to very simple one-page ones, in more rural areas. So I'm sure there's a way to strike a happy medium in there and get what's applicable to your area based on your needs and part of it's going to be based on who you have as wardens.
Right. And we've got some good candidates. It's not that we don't have good candidates. It just seems to me that we're trying to accomplish one goal in a very roundabout way. If we have law enforcement, right now, if you've got somebody, let's take, for instance, this lady that had 50 cats. It cost the county almost $600 to take care of what was basically a hoarding case. Because our animal warden was responding to that and law enforcement wasn't really involved, to be able to go through the court system, we have to utilize our county attorney's office to open a case and go with, try to go through the court system that way, when all we would have had to have done is had an animal control officer respond, cite the person based on our new animal ordinance that would have been in effect, and they would have carried that case through the court system, and we would probably already be on the way to getting some of our money back. That's this simplified approach to, I think, what we're trying to do here. And unfortunately, the key to that, in my opinion, is probably law enforcement, unless something dramatically changes with the way we've been doing things. We talked about the future of the shelter, everything going to data where everything's gonna be online when you go out and you've got your scanner and you scan it and you use your smartphone, and right there you're able to find out where the dog belongs because everything's microchipped. That's training, that's technology, that's a system that we're not even close to.
Now, that's assuming everybody will microchip their animal.
Well, we're microchipping at the shelter.
I understand that, but a lot of animals you get in are not
Right,
microchipped.
no, you have to have people in those positions that are willing, capable, and trained to carry out those duties. And so, that's what I'm saying, while we have the opportunity to kind of fix the components that aren't working, hopefully we can look at all the options and see what's gonna be the most efficient way
Well,
to move forward.
The thing about law enforcement is like you said, with the court system, I don't even know, and Jeff may know more about this than I do, if you're going to use somebody other than law enforcement to do citing and all that, then you get into training issues and going through the state to get the ability to do that, and
Well,
then following through the court system.
Statute gives an appointed animal control officer that authority,
Well, I mean,
in certain areas.
you know, you're gonna have to go and get an ORI number for them before they can issue citations. They're gonna have to, if they're gonna be handwritten citations, or are they gonna be NBC-produced citations? If so, they're gonna have to go get training for that, and equipment to do the citations. You know, I don't know the answer to that. I mean, it's obviously, you know, have the ability to do that, but, you know, that would just be something you would have to do.
Well, that's like I was saying, you know, there's certainly a way to create an ordinance that will fit your needs in whatever type, community you live in. And it's like anything else. If if you say, create an ordinance where we can control every dog in the county, well, I can do that. But that's gonna require a very strict ordinance that has licensing requirements and all these other things, and there's gonna be an expense to that,
Right.
you know. Or you can, you know, the statute's pretty loosely written, and what, some of this that I've done is I've tried to codify it or make it interpretable so that you can look at it and everybody interpret it the same in using it here. So, you know, there's one end of the spectrum, the other, and I don't know what'll fit best necessarily. I just,
But
that's
talk
where I need
about
y'all's
though,
input.
the runs that where you're making these runs, these animal control, calls. I don't wanna get in a situation where you're taken away from your normal duties. I mean, right now, you've got a dog warden, animal control officer, whatever you wanna do. If you get a call and you call him in, and then you get another call, before you even get there, you get another call for an accident or involving people, then you divert and go there, I'm sure. I mean, you wouldn't be going to, unless you thought it was life-threatening, you wouldn't be going to an animal control situation when there was other things for you to
No,
do.
and
The dog warden or the animal control officer, he can go on and do whatever he can do, but I don't want to take away, you know, we get law enforcement involved on a total basis. I'm afraid you'll end up at times either leaving the animals alone or having to leave situations where people are involved alone. So I
I
don't
may
want
be
to.
speaking out of turn for the sheriff, because we didn't discuss this, but I believe, based on the amount that he used for, you know, to figure for time, that was his intention to have them, when they're working animal control, that's all they would do. You know, they would be separate from, and that's why to have somebody separate from the shift. Especially on afternoon shift, there's no way we could say, okay, we're gonna take this person that's on shift and do it. because like
I
you say,
wouldn't
it just,
expect,
it
I
wouldn't
wouldn't
be
expect that to
possible.
ever, I would expect the animal, and I understand that, but I would also expect if he's being the animal control officer today, if something happened, he'd be called,
You're gonna be
into a
asking-
situation.
You're
I
gonna be
would
asking
think.
law enforcement 24/7, not just one shift. 24/7 to be strictly on call for animal control.
Well, it's just
That
like
sounds
hard and
like
overtime.
tough-
When they're on
tough
hard and
to do.
overtime, they're on hard and overtime. They're not called to do anything else. They're scheduled for hard and overtime, and that's where they stay, and that's what they're paid to do. And they don't answer an accident call if they're on hard and overtime because the city of Hardin pays them to be there.
Yeah, that may be.
So that,
We'd have
to
to
me,
work all
is,
that out, but.
is my understanding of
That-
it. It would be scheduled overtime.
And two, it would be basically like, this officer is going to be on call from,
What's,
midnight
Dave,
to-
you know off the top of your head, why, I think I can probably tell what you're gonna say, but how many, about 3/4 or more of the time y'all go to the call anyway? Is that because of there's obviously some kind of an issue going on?
well, so often our calls are dog that is loose, so the animal warden gets a call. Then we get the call because it growled at the kids and chased mom while she was on her walk. So we get a call to answer a complaint about someone harboring a vicious animal. Then the dog warden would get a call to
But
to
Jeff,
catch
isn't that
those
something
dogs.
the animal control officer should be dealing with himself?
Well,
Harboring the vicious animal
Okay.
issue?
If we get the
we
call.
do, go ahead.
I said, if you get the call, it depends. The sheriff's office gets a lot of calls that are, and I don't want to say trivial, but really they are. You know, somebody, I used to get these calls, 1 o'clock in the morning that, they were racing at Calvert City. And I got those quite frequently when that racetrack was running over there. And I had a dog wake me up at 1:30 one morning, so I just called that gentleman. I said, "Can you hear that dog?" And he got irate. He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, there's a dog barking in my neighborhood, woke me up. You call me and wake me up when you have a problem. I just gonna call that you listen to that dog." I mean, you get some of those calls, what I'm saying, you respond, you don't know whether they're legitimate or not. A lot of people are just afraid of pit bulls in general. Whether or not the pit bull is acting aggressive or anything else, somebody sees a pit bull in their yard, that's a danger to them.
I don't think that the animal control officers are following those situations through, are they?
No,
I mean, they may pick up the animal, but they don't deal with any harboring of vicious complaints or anything. You all have
They
to
don't deal with
still
the
do all
complaints
that.
at all. Then the other one we get a lot of too is, we'll get calls about someone is, got their dog tied up in the backyard, no food, no water. Get a lot of those calls. And something else we get a lot of is calls about, bigger animals, horses, cattle, left to run free, or they're not being cared for properly, or they're being abused, and then we have to follow up on those cases, as a criminal case.
That's where the duplication's coming in, is because you all are having to,
Well, especially on the dogs, where the duplication comes in is, we may follow the criminal matter, but as far as catching the dog and taking it to the pound and all that, then, there's duplication because, they're coming out and taking care of that. Maybe, if there's one available.
Well, then you have the issue of the dogs coming to the shelter and the shelter staff having no idea what's going on with the dog or how long to hold them or what the options are. And then it's just kind of a mess. If you're involved in it and you see how difficult it can be to have all these different levels of communication. Some people call Golden at home, some people will call Dennis at home. Everything needs to go through dispatch. Everything needs to be logged. Everything needs to have the ability to track a time response. How long is it taking for them to respond? What's the consequence of the call? Where is it going to go? Is it going through court system? Those sorts of things. That would make it streamlined. I mean, I can make a case all day for why I think it should be law enforcement, but I guess my question is, why wouldn't it be?
well, I think there's no question in anybody's mind that law enforcement would certainly be the best option. Is it feasible? Is it something we can work in where it's feasible? Of course, like Dave says, to be, and I actually was involved with city council in Hardin implemented the Hardin overtime issue, if you will call it that. And the purpose of that was so that officer could remain in Hardin. So we took an off-duty officer in the city of Hardin, hired him to work in just Hardin. So they paid him for 4-hour blocks to be in Hardin, and then they'd reimburse my office for his pay. So that's how we managed to have them over there, was for them to pass back. And that'd be the same thing with this, or it's not gonna work, because Judge said you're gonna have to be 24/7. And you're gonna have somebody available for a call all the time. And that would be the thing we have to iron out, is can we
How many
feasibly
unserved
provide that?
papers do you have down there at this time, David?
Oh, my gosh,
Kevin
I
told
wouldn't
us at one time it was in thousands. I don't know if that's that many. That was
oh,
some
if you
time
count
ago.
warrants and all, probably
Warrants
so.
and papers, yeah, there's, gosh, some of them are years old too, those warrants.
You know, it helped a lot when they switched over to the e-warrant system, and Judge did away with a lot of the older ones. But, you know, if you have somebody comes here and gets a speeding ticket, you know, and then doesn't show up for court, and they issue a warrant for them, and they're from Alaska, you know, it's never gonna be served, it's set there. So we had an awful lot of those that had to deal with.
But the benefit is you're not being called out on these calls anymore because you have an ACO that's taking them. I mean, you all are answering, to date, over 500 calls per year, law enforcement. Primarily SO and Benton, sometimes in conjunction. Calvert's a small amount. But y'all are answering those calls, so those duty officers that are on duty,
Are taking them now.
they're taking them.
Now, I'm telling you this because the sheriff did the math on this, but my understanding is that he looked at the call volume, based that on you know, days of the year and so on, to come up with a rough figure of how many calls that you would get, how long would they take, put that into an hourly figure. And like I said, he came up to be that doing it as a rotating, you know, overtime type duty, you know, between 3 or 4 officers would cost about 42 to 45,000 a year.
I think a lot of calls did not go through dispatch. Golden has been there so long that so many people just call him. So, you know, I don't know how you determine.
I don't know
Yeah,
what the call volume would
I don't
actually
think
be.
I don't
that.
either. I just know there's no
Can't look
perfect
that into
system,
it.
I know that, but I also know that we've got an animal ordinance that is not gonna be enforceable with just anybody taking these jobs. Am I wrong in saying that? That ordinance right there
Well-
is gonna require specialized training.
Here's what you all have to decide. Traditionally, the animal control officers system in this county has been non-law enforcement, okay? Law enforcement kicks in when as the case arises. You're gonna have to decide, you know, how you want that split up, or, you know, do you want a full-time one extreme, have a full-time animal control officer that's also law enforcement officer, does whatever, that's all he does. Or a combination of the two, kind of like what you've got, or, you know, the sheriff's office. And based on that made it, you know, we may have to, depending on what you think fits our needs, may determine what the ordinance. I mean, it's kind of a chicken and or egg thing. Which comes first, the ordinance or the system that the ordinance is going to work in? You know, it's hard to say.
And a lot of our calls, and I wouldn't know how many, but a lot of them come from the city of Benton, city of Calvert, and city of Hardin, which pays nothing into our animal control office. Now, are we obligated to enforce animal control inside the corporate limits? Or is that the responsibility of city government? Because we've been doing it all these years. And a lot of our calls and our traps that we set are right here in Benton, or in Calvert, or in Hardin.
I think so too, and I did talk
Benton
with,
says they pay, I don't know, I've never seen a check, I don't know if they pay or not.
well, I think
That's
they're
the
talking
thing.
about county
They say they do.
taxes. I mean, but, you know, Benton City Police were also interested in having,
That's
What
what I'm
they say,
aware
An
of.
they'll
ACO,
tell you that they
you
pay.
know.
Not to us.
That's,
They've never paid us.
they say they
The
do.
paid us for some dirt that they ordered through the park and
Yeah.
stuff. Something.
But it might be workable, it might be where the sheriff's office had two and Benton had one or something. I mean, there's options. We're not collecting any of the fees. We're not enforcing any of the things that are already in place, like in the city of Benton. There's a lot of money that could have been collected already, had we had a system in place that addressed those issues. One of the reasons why we've got multiple visits at all these houses in Benton is because they only have to pay $15 to reclaim their animal. If we were going by the Benton ordinance, they would be paying $75, $125 per animal, and that's a significant difference and would go a long way in helping to fund this program.
But are we empowered to collect the city ordinance?
Well, it would be to our benefit if it.
I'm saying it'd be to our
Yeah,
benefit if
yeah.
we could,
Yeah,
but are we empowered is what I'm saying.
I think the
Well-
ordinance says it's to be
Yeah, I mean, I think if
collected. through
any
animal
law
control.
enforcement officer, or any officer that does that in this city, whether it's a county or an animal warden or city officer, I think that it applies the same. Now, I would have to look back at it. Now, that whole ordinance is about 50 pages long, and I've
very
read it,
firm.
but it's been a while.
Talking about the cities?
Yeah.
How much do they enforce it?
They don't, I mean,
don't.
they call us. Or call Golden. And it's a lot of times I get the calls, and I call Golden, we set traps at different places, you know.
Which, is fine, but, last January, we talked about every call going through dispatch. And our wardens were told every call needs to go through dispatch, and I understand, I'm not trying to pick on anybody, but at some point, it's just like the sick policy. If you make a policy, you need to follow it. So if every call goes through dispatch, when somebody gets the call, they simply say, you need to call dispatch. And then it goes through dispatch, and then it's trackable. But I think we have the opinion that because people have been here 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, that we have to kind of do things the way it's always been done. And at some point, we have to do what makes sense. And I'm not saying that means it's law enforcement, but it's definitely law enforcement or training. One of the two, because we are going to be liable. I mean, the state's telling us that by issuing this big manual, this big saying, here's what we say you should be doing. And they're saying that for a reason. And we had a meeting last year where we said, guys, all we're asking is that you just go through this training. Because at some point, we're gonna be liable. And then we're gonna be facing a lawsuit, and we're gonna be saying, it was 80 hours worth of training, that's all it was. Just saying.
But if they've done called you and told you what the problem is, then you tell them to call dispatch, they're not gonna be very happy.
But you gotta
When
train
they
them
call me and tell
sometime,
me
too.
there's a tree in the road, and I tell them to call dispatch, they're not gonna be very happy. I'm
They
just
don't
gonna
have to
take
call
care of it.
dispatch, the officer can. I did it all my career,
Yeah,
33
no, we
years.
can do
Right.
that,
If I'm
just so
going
you
down-
don't
if
have
I'm
to
going
tell
down the
them
road and
folks,
somebody fans you
don't have to tell
over,
them folks to call again.
Well-
They've made their call.
They do appreciate, though, that you
Dogs
say so we
can do
can
that, so.
track how long it takes for an officer to reach your home. They appreciate that, because a lot of them will tell you, well, it takes 2 hours for somebody to get here. Well, ma'am, in an effort to make sure that we know how long it's taken our officers to respond, we ask that you call dispatch so it can be logged. It's just a matter of training people into what our new policies are.
Well,
But
if
if
the
we,
officer has radio equipment, all that's do, it's someone tells him, calls him, it doesn't matter how he's notified. If you tell him of a complaint on the side of the street, he can simply radio dispatch and tell them that he received the call.
we
from
talked about
so-and-so.
them having radios, they don't have
Simple.
radios yet.
Happens every day.
We've talked about all these things to try to help fix the problem, but we're very slow to make it happen, and so I just think while we're in transition, maybe we can fix some of these problems.
Anything else?
Happy Thanksgiving.
Adjourned.